guys, welcome back to The Funny Thing Is. I'm your host, Nicole Birch, where every week I bring you a guest who shares a life-changing event, the medicine they took to get better, and the funniest lesson they learned along the way. Today is another solo podcast. The last time we did one, I did a Q&A, and you guys had a lot of comments for me and more questions, so we're going to get to those. We have a bunch of people writing in more asking about like my career, how I got here, what it's been going on, what is Los Angeles like right now, how do I feel about it, what is my advice to aspiring comedians and actors and stuff thinking about coming to Los Angeles, especially from the Midwest and the South. So I will hit all of those today. So let's get started. Okay, number one, the first question is, what made you leave Kansas? So this would have been 2009. I was 27 years old. So that's a little late in the game for a lot of people to come to LA. But I graduated from college. I ended up majoring. What did I major in? I know I was pre-med for a while, but I think I ended up taking my minor in Spanish, making it my major so I could graduate somewhat on time. I still don't think I graduated on time. And, then I get back and realize, I don't want to teach Spanish. So what am I going to do? So then I started selling real estate. I started bartending, or I kept bartending because, I was bartending through college. And so bartending was really good and easy money, and then started doing real estate. I started doing real estate in 2008. So not a great year, a good year, as they told me, to learn the ropes because nothing was happening. But I did that for a while and started taking acting class and was really good at it, and that's when my acting coach, Andy Garrison, said, you either need to go to New York or LA, or you need to dig your heels in and stay here, and you'll be performing maybe at I think it's called the Kansas City Metropolitan Theater, and that's going to be your life. And I was like, well, that doesn't feel good. So I took a trip to Los Angeles to visit some friends. And within probably an hour, actually, I was still at LAX. They hadn't come to pick me up yet. And I remember thinking, I'm moving here, which I'm glad that happened, because had I gone to visit New York, I would have moved to New York because I love the vibe of New York City, especially in my 20s. But LA was warm and the people were awesome. And I just had a really good experience. And so I based my entire future on one trip to Los Angeles. So that's what I did. I moved in with my mom for about 6 months, saved up about $10,000, spent all of that in the first 3 months of Los Angeles, and then decided I came out here to be a very serious dramatic actress. And that lasted 2 days because I auditioned for the Groundlings and I got in, which that's not really difficult to get in because it's a business. They just want to make sure you're not crazy. So I'm not saying that like as a bragging thing. So we go... I start basic. I move up the ranks pretty quickly. I did have to repeat a level. For those of you that are in the program or thinking about doing the program that are like, you can never repeat a level. There's so many people that are even in main company that had to repeat levels. So don't let that freak you out. And I started doing Groundlings, and then I never thought I would ever leave because LA was my home. I made so many fast friends here, either by bartending or by being creative. So that's kind of how that started. So that's why I left Kansas City. Let's see. What did you learn your first few years in LA? I knew about the struggling actor, the starving actor, and I knew a lot of guys, not so many women, which is interesting, but I knew a lot of men that were unemployed and that were fine being unemployed. And that would still somehow scrounge up money to they would couch surf and then scrounge up money for a class, which was weird. And I was like, I don't want that. So I found a job. I mean, I was bartending all the time. It took 2 years to find a really good job at a place called Pineapple Hill, which is where I've bartended all the way up till now, minus like 4 years in the middle when I had my daughter. And I will say that I feel like I manifested that place because I wanted a place where I could work. I could clock in, clock out, didn't take a lot of brain energy, that was flexible if I had an audition, and that I could make a lot of money. And that was Pineapple Hill. And so my first 2 years, I was like at, TGI Fridays, PF Chang's, a lot of chain places, and I wasn't making near as much. But if you find a dive bar in the Valley, I know that sounds ridiculous, but people just pay you more. That's just it. And it's all people in the industry. It's all older men that have been in, like, they're behind the camera, they're gaffers, they're grips, they're directors, and they just want a little seedy little dive bar to hide out in. And you can talk shit to them and they love it. You can kind of even treat them like shit a little bit and they like that. So it's kind of like stripping. Anyway, so my first few years, I learned that I didn't want to be a struggling actor. Like, I wanted to make a decent living while also pursuing my career. And I wanted to make enough money to also be able to do creative endeavors. So either groundlings classes, UCB classes, making short films, stuff like that. And I also knew how much you put into it. You're making your own world out here. So however much you put into it, you got an idea for a show that you want to put up in a theater. Guess what? That theater's $400. If you sell tickets, you might make $100. Like, there's ways to do it. And I've booked huge venues before. I booked a theater in North Hollywood called the El Portal Theater. I booked it. I had not even written the script to a show called The 7 Guys You Date Before You Get Married. Hadn't even written it yet. Just wrote the outline. I paid them all my hard-earned money of like $2,500 down. It was like a 400-seat theater. And I booked a date a month out. And my girlfriend was like, she was with me, and she's like, "Are you insane?" And they also had a smaller venue there. And I was like, "No, I want the big one." And she goes, "You haven't even written a script yet." And I was like, yeah, it'll come. It's fine. I just had that stupidity, probably is what it is, or like whatever you call that. And I did write it, and we did do it. And then it ended up running for 15 months and it was great. But I just had that, you're creating your own world, and it's my money and I've earned it. And so I know now that there's a deadline, I'm going to hit that deadline. I'm going to make it, and we're going to make it work. So just kind of going that, like, don't wait for people to do projects with you. If you can, like, if you can learn how to shoot and edit, editing for me is a trigger point, because I would rather work an extra bar shift and pay somebody else that's better than me to edit before learning how to edit. That's just me. That's the one thing that I'm like, how much money do I want to spend on, or how much time do I want to spend on that? Let's see. What was it like being at the Groundlings? Groundlings was, I mean, it had its good and its bad, right? But mostly I haven't been in it for 10 years, almost 8 years. And I look back with more gratitude than disdain or anything like that. And I know I've talked about it on this podcast, and I've talked about it on like the Basshole podcast and other shows, but it did teach me how to write 40 hours a week, and I wasn't getting paid, and how to perform a new show every day. It's literally the structure of Saturday Night Live. You pitch one day, they go through it, they pick the sketches, you have a dress rehearsal on on Saturday, and the show is live after a tech rehearsal on Sunday. And that's kind of how fast it goes, because that's called the Sunday Company, right? Working my way through the program, I went through what many people go through in any type of schooling out here in Los Angeles, where you are obsessed for like, I don't know, 2 to 4 years. There's like that period where you're like, if you're at UCB, you're hanging out with people at Birds next door afterwards, and you're trying to network with the other actors and the other comedians. When it was Groundlings, we were hanging out at the dark room in the Village Idiot, and we were trying to network with the people we idolize, the main company members. And you kind of like go all in. I think you have to go through that, and you have to idolize them a little bit so that it makes you better. And then you kind of get like senioritis and a little bit of burnout around like year 5 and 6. It took me 6 years to get into Sunday Company, which at the time was pretty fast paced. Now I think it's longer, but because they've added other levels, of course they have. And it is a business. I wish I would have reminded myself that it's a business more. And I think my comedy would have changed a little bit to, how do I say this? Play to the audience more, I guess. I had a director one time, and when I started doing Sunday Company, she goes, "Okay, up until now, you've been performing for your other friends and comedians, and you've been really funny. Now I need you to play to Omaha," which, no disrespect to Omaha, but when they say play to Omaha, it means now you're having audiences come in and pay to see you because of the Groundlings Theater, not because it's the Nicole Birch show or it's this specific a group of actors show. We want you to play to Omaha, meaning Well, I think they meant dumb it down a little bit, which is insulting, but I would say it's to play to the masses. So my character Nurse Rachel would have done very well, but instead I was doing highbrow comedy where I was like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if after I lost weight, I still had the fat girl in my head, and then she comes out on stage while I'm the skinny me is eating, and the fat version comes out and starts scolding her for eating. Like wouldn't that? And they're like, "What? That's so. What are we doing? That's so high concept." Do you know what I mean? Um, and so I was trying to be the smartest person in the room, and she was like, "Just be the funniest. Stop trying to be the smartest person in the room and just be the funniest," which is the opposite of UCB because they're like, always be the smartest person in the room. So it depends like what is more your style. I was more wigs and mustaches and canes and stuff than anything else. But I did learn, I mean, I made so many really good friends, and the people that are really good at improv, like Edie Patterson, Mitch Silpa, Jeremy Rowley, all those people that are so good at that, when you're on stage with them, you do automatically get better. I did a scene with Kristen Wiig. So she was a visiting alumni and I was the new person. And because it was during Sunday. And we did a scene where, what was the suggestion they gave? It was just her and I on stage. And so they said, okay, for these two, give us a suggestion. I think we were sisters and something needed changing, which was such a weird specific thing. Like, give us something that's going on. Something needs changed or something. Whatever the audience member suggested, the director changed it and said something needs changing. So I went with my idea, which was, did I do this? Oh yeah. So then I went down. So the lights go down, the lights come back up, and I am downstage and I am with my legs in the air, think like a baby on my back with my legs in the air. And I don't know why I did that. But then Kristen Wiig ended up changing my diaper on stage. So that was the thing that needed changing. It was the weirdest, and everybody lost their minds laughing. I can't remember how we got to the point where Kristen started changing my diaper, but it was the funniest thing. And she was smoking a cigarette while she was doing it. I blacked out because you're on stage with fucking Kristen Wiig. And so I don't really remember that. I do remember a few years later being on set with Bill Hader. Don't worry, the scene got cut. And he asked me, he goes, "Oh, I saw that you did Groundlings." And this was for the show Barry, which by the way, he was like, had a hand in casting, which is crazy because he's the EP. And so he goes, "Oh yeah, I really wish I could have done Groundlings. I did Second City." And I was like, "Yeah, I think it still worked out for you though. I think you're still doing just fine. This is your show. We're walking to your set, And I go, actually, I did an improv scene with Kristen Wiig, and I know she's performed with like 1,000 people before, but I think she'd actually remember our improv. And he goes, "Well, what happened?" I go, "She changed my diaper on the stage." And he just started laughing so hard and immediately texted her. I don't know if she texted back, but I thought, what a memorable moment on the Groundling stage is that Kristen Wiig changed my diaper. Okay, let's see. What made you want to do a podcast, and specifically why this one? I think I'm just innately curious about other people's lives, how they get to where they're at, especially if they have kind of a survivor story. Or, I mean, you guys, like if you guys have followed for a while, the guests that we have on here, some of them have really intense stories, suicides and again, I always refer to Nanor, who had to escape Kuwait during the Desert Storm when she was 13, like insane stuff. Then you have some like funnier stuff, but they've all come out with it with a positive outlook, or even though changed, and some of them greatly changed, they still have that silver lining. And I relate to those people. I'm always looking for the silver lining. I'm always looking for the light at the end of the tunnel. And like those people, when they bring it and they come on here and they kind of, especially the ones that know the tone of the show and that are really ready to dig in, get messy, and then share their light, like those are my favorite people. And thus that's like the theme of the show. And I hope it resonates. What have I learned from it? Okay, I've got actually a list of things that I've learned from certain guests. like, okay, so like Ryan Niemiller, who you guys know him as Cripple Threat, who's amazing. We both talk like, do you make fun of your kids? And the answer was no. Like on stage when we're doing stand up, he's a stand up comedian. He has a 2-year-old, and I just have a thing where if I do make fun of her, it's more comes back on me as self-deprecation, because if I don't want her seeing it one day and having her feelings hurt. That also said is I really love her. We like really love our kids. And so those comics in the 80s that were like, yeah, my fucking kid sucks. What an idiot. He's so stupid. Like, I just can't picture doing that. That's not my thing. And then I've learned mostly resilience from everybody that comes on here and how important it is to cope, like to find tools to cope. Therapy, ayahuasca, stand-up comedy, journaling, all that stuff. I find absolutely fascinating. Then what are some things you didn't expect from the podcast that you have learned? And I'll touch on this on the next episode, but on the next solo episode, but that women are the hardest on other women. And that is a personal opinion of mine. That is a personal experience of mine. But then from other people who have come on the platform and shared their stories, women are the ones who get the most hate comments. Even when we had the dumb dads on here, there are 2 stay-at-home dads, and they go, let me be very clear. If my wife did any of the bits that we did about feeding your kids gummies or goldfish or letting them stay up or giving them the iPad, they would get so much vitriol from other mothers, where when dads do it, it's like, oh, you guys are just doing your best. You know, it's that kind of thing that pisses me the fuck off because it's just not fair. And also, I just think if you have the balls to take out your phone and to start typing, and you have a choice to type something positive or negative, and you're like, I'm going to go with negative. I want somebody to hear my voice and my opinion, and I want to piss in their Cheerios. What are you doing? What are you doing? I think the only negative comments I've ever typed in the last 5 years were like when they wanted to change the word pedophile to minor attracted persons. You guys remember that when they were trying to do that? Yeah, I'm going to have some words to say about that because it's universally unaccepted and ridiculous. So I'll type on that. But if somebody's like, hey, I'm not going to breastfeed my baby. I've decided this is the best formula. You think I'm going to chime in on that? No, it's not my fucking business. Mind your own business. Let's see. What's it like being married, and how did you know you wanted to be married? Marriage is awesome. I love Matt. Matt is my person. We complement each other really well. He came into kind of a shit storm, and then it became more of a shit storm while we were actively together. So it was just a crazy time. It happened really fast. It's so weird to think we're about to celebrate our 1 year next week, probably by the time this airs. And we've only known each other 3 years. So it happened fast, and I wouldn't have it any other way. We complement each other. There's like, you know, when you watch those videos that they've been posting about guys feeding their wives cake at the wedding, they shove it in their face. And everybody's like, get a divorce. This is a red flag. Why would he do that to you? Like when they're really aggressive about it. I remember showing Matt that. And he's like, it would never even occur to me to do that. You just got your makeup done. And the way he said it was so innocent. And I'm like, that's Matt. Like, we have a pretty clear boundary. We don't insult each other. We don't raise our voices. If we raise our voices, it's because I honestly, my daughter the other day thought we were fighting. She also thought I was fighting with my mom, but we're Italian. And so we get animated over a certain subject. And so we're like, oh, so then this happened, and then this happened. And then our voices raised and we get really excited. And she's like, why are you guys fighting? I'm like, we're not fighting. We're talking about, you know, the Dallas Stars hockey team. Like, you know, as an example. And so we don't really have disagreements or fights. And if we do, we have the sit downs. It's just easy. And I know I dated really roughly for 15 years. And everybody would tell me, when you know, and it shouldn't be that hard. And when it's your person, you can go through the ups and downs of life smoothly compared to always white knuckling it with somebody. And that's exactly true. But you're not really going to know it until it happens or until you're ready for it. So I feel like giving advice on that is like they were just speaking into a void when they were talking to me about that. That was pretty much. What would I tell my 20-year-old self? Probably don't go to college. Not that I'm telling you not to go to college. I'm an entertainer. I could have been cutting my teeth on stand up at age 18, earlier, in fact. And I kind of wish I would have done that. Because granted, I had a full ride the first 2 years. So like it didn't cost me a lot of money, but yeah, college isn't what it was back then. I went to college where I remember we were the first class that when you got out, everybody was like, oh, there's no jobs. And I was like, well, that can't be true. That's why you go to college. And they're like, yeah, but there's no jobs. And there's 10 times as many colleges and not as many workplaces that are opening for college students. And so I was like, wow, I just wasted 4 years. I mean, I learned, how to do a keg stand and sorority life, and I made friends. But I also lived in Topeka, Kansas, not the comedy hub you think it is. And so I kind of wish I would have done that. Again, I don't really have regrets because I did make some amazing friends. But if you want to do something professional, then go into college. But like, if not, take that, what do they call it? That break year, that respite year? Take that year off. What would I tell myself at 30 years old? Stop dating that guy. You know the one. You know the 12 I'm talking about. Stop dating all of them. Don't date them. They suck. Okay, great. And then what would I tell my 60-year-old self? Stretch. Probably I'd say that. Make sure you can still touch your knees. Okay. What would I tell my 80-year-old self? Girl, you're almost there. We made it. We crossed the finish line. You did it. Just hold your husband's hand because he's still around because you're so much older than he is. He's probably got a girlfriend and it's okay. We're going to make it together. Love your daughter. Maybe you got grandkids. Start every morning like my Aunt Jean used to with a highball of scotch. Sundays are reserved for Bloody Marys, but we're crossing that finish line. It's going to be awesome. Okay. And then when did I know comedy was my thing? I knew comedy. I mean, everybody in my family's funny. Like I come from a long line. I just watched a childhood video on a VHS tape, and my mom and my uncle were having something called a gizzard toss in the kitchen, where my uncle is throwing. My mom's in the other room actually right now. Where my uncle would throw a gizzard and my mom would catch it in a paper bag filled with flour because then they were going to deep fry the gizzards. And the amount of fun that family had, they like to have a good drink, they'd smoke, they have a lot of fun, a lot of laughter. It's loud. We're Italian. Like it's that kind of vibe. So I was always, and then on my dad's side, it's really dry sense of humor. My grandpa was funny. My uncle's kind of funny. And it was like, who can make the person laugh the most? And there was a hierarchy, I remember, with my grandpa and dad. Like my dad could laugh at my grandpa. I could laugh at my dad and grandpa, but rarely would it go the other way around. Rarely would my grandpa laugh at my dad or me, and rarely would my dad laugh at me. And I remember we were at dinner one time and I said, don't even ask me what I said. And I had them both rolling so hard. And I remember my cousins, Christy and Jenny, looking at me like, I can't believe you made them both laugh. And that power is still the same high I've been chasing for the last 43 years. So that's how palpable that is. And then lastly, what have you learned working at Pineapple Hill Saloon and Grill? That's so funny because we are actually having a goodbye party tomorrow as I prepare to leave to go back to Kansas City. I used to say Pineapple Hill taught me one thing I never wanted to do was I never wanted to be a regular at a specific bar because I thought the world is so big. Why would you pigeonhole yourself to one place over and over and over again? And I still stand by that in a lot of ways, but I do think there is that Cheers community, especially we just lost George Wendt. And there is that camaraderie that I think people feel when they come into the bar. And sometimes people really need that. And I used to this was years ago. I remember kind of snubbing my nose at that. Like I was like, just go to there's so many bars in LA. Why would you just stick to one? But it's like, that's because they need that and they want that community. So like, why would you shit on that? Like, I think that's amazing. I also learned, and this is something that I've dealt with personally, is that women who have children who are divorced, that when they come in at 2 p.m. on a Friday, sometimes on a Thursday, and they start drinking a little bit more than they're supposed to, that is because their kids are with their father and they're having a hard time coping because they don't know what their identity is. And holy shit, did that happen to me. And I used to be like, here we go again. So-and-so's getting lit Friday and Saturday, but then she'll be sober as a judge by Monday. And it's like, yeah, because she's trying to cope her way through it. And I'll be honest, the first 6 weeks where Everly went to her dad on the weekends, I was a train wreck. I was like, I don't even know what my footing is. I don't even know where I'm supposed to be right now. You know what? Bottom of a vodka bottle sounds delicious. And then, I've learned from that to not do that and to sit in those gross, ugly feelings and power through that. But I needed to work at Pineapple to realize that was even a pattern, to realize why they do that and to have compassion for that. I have way more compassion now after I don't know, how old am I? Oh my God, 22 years of bartending. Then I have judgment. And I used to have a lot of judgment in my 30s. So, yeah. And a lot of those people, I think it's also because those people helped me when I was a single mom. And they helped me not just financially with tips, but I mean, a lot of them furnished my daughter's entire nursery because I couldn't afford to do it. And they showed up and they still show up. And so I have a lot of gratitude towards that place. And my boss hired me back when I was a struggling single mom right after the pandemic. I mean, we're still coming out of the pandemic, and she really couldn't hire anybody else, but she made room for me. So I have nothing but gratitude towards that place. And I also found out I was pregnant in the bathroom. That dirty, dirty bathroom is where I found out I was pregnant. So, all right, I've answered that round of questions. You guys keep them coming. These are really, really good. If you guys have anything else, the next episode, I think we're going to focus on what I've learned from specific guests and my inspirations and all that stuff. So thanks for tuning in. Keep writing in. As always, you can follow me at The Funny Thing Is Podcast or at Nicole Birch Comedy on all socials. Also, you can follow me at NicoleComedy.com, where I have all my tour dates and you can buy tickets there. There's merchandise, all the stuff that you could possibly want. And you can DM me on any of those platforms. And those will be the questions that I read on air. Okay? We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.